Garden Lodge stands on Logan Place in Kensington, London, a Georgian townhouse hidden behind high brick walls on a quiet street that reveals nothing and hides everything. In 1980, Freddie Mercury bought it, and for the next 11 years, he lived a life no one was allowed to see until November 1991, when the truth the walls had kept finally broke out into the world. He left it to Mary Austin, and Mary Austin has lived there ever since for more than 30 years in a house that the world outside its walls has never been permitted to enter, maintaining a privacy so complete and so sustained that it has become, in the decades since Freddie's death, one of the most discussed and least understood acts of loyalty in the entire story of Queen. What Freddie Mercury asked Mary Austin to protect when he knew he was dying was not simply a building. It was the private world he had constructed inside it, the life he had actually lived, as opposed to the life the public had been permitted to observe. And Mary Austin has kept that promise with a completeness and a consistency that, 30 years on, remains the clearest possible evidence of what their relationship actually was. Mary Austin entered Freddie Mercury's life in 1970 when he was 23 years old and entirely unknown, and she was 19 and working at the Biba Boutique in Kensington. They became a couple in the ordinary sense of that word together, living together, building a life together in the way of two young people in London in the early 1970s who had found each other and decided to stay. Their romantic relationship ended in the mid-1970s, when Freddie's understanding of his own sexuality became something he could no longer manage within the framework of a heterosexual partnership. He told Mary, "She has described the moment in the few interviews she has ever given as one of the most difficult of her life, not because she was angry or because she felt deceived, but because she understood, with the specific clarity of someone who knew him very well, that what he was telling her was completely true, and that the appropriate response was not recrimination, but love. And the love did not end. It changed form. It became something that does not have a conventional name, something between friendship and family, and partnership and devotion, and it continued without interruption for the rest of Freddie's life. What distinguished Mary Austin's relationship with Freddie Mercury from every other relationship in his life was not its duration, though it was the longest. It was not its intimacy, though it was profound. It was its specific quality of unconditional acceptance, the fact that Mary Austin loved Freddie Mercury in a way that did not require him to be any particular version of himself, that accommodated everything he was without condition or complaint, and that he returned in kind. The people of Freddie's later life, Jim Hutton, Peter Freestone, the friends of his Munich years and his Garden Lodge years, were people he loved and who loved him. But Mary occupied a different category. She was the person who had known him before he was Freddie Mercury. She had known Farrokh Bulsara, the young man from Feltham who had not yet constructed the persona that would define his career and his public identity. And because she had known him before the construction, she was the one person in his life to whom the construction was always transparent, who could see behind it without effort, who did not need the performance, and to whom he did not perform. Freddie Mercury made his will in 1991, in the months before his death, when it was clear to everyone who was close to him that the timeline had shortened decisively. The will left the bulk of his estate Garden Lodge, the majority of his personal property, and the largest share of his financial assets to Mary Austin. Jim Hutton received a sum of money. His parents received a sum. His sister, Kashmira, received a sum. The music royalties were divided among various parties. But Garden Lodge, the house itself, the private world within its walls, went to Mary. This decision has been discussed and debated and occasionally criticized in the decades since, most often by people who feel that Jim Hutton, as Freddie's partner of 7 years, should have received more. What those discussions tend to miss is the specific quality of what Freddie was protecting by making this decision. He was not distributing his wealth. He was entrusting his privacy. And the person he trusted with his privacy was the person who had always protected it most completely. What Freddie Mercury said to Mary Austin in the weeks and months before his death, the specific conversations in which he communicated what he needed her to do and how he needed her to do it, belongs to Mary Austin. She has kept it. What has emerged from the accounts of people who were present at Garden Lodge during that period, And from the fragments Mary herself has shared in her extremely rare public statements, is that the conversations were direct and unambiguous. Freddie knew he was dying, he had known for 4 years. By the final months, he had set aside whatever remained of the pretense and was communicating with the people he loved with the specific directness of someone who has very limited time and no patience left for anything other than the essential. What he asked Mary to do was not complicated. He asked her to protect the private world, to keep Garden Lodge as a home and not as a shrine, to prevent it from becoming a public spectacle or a museum or a commercial monument to his celebrity, to live there, to keep the walls high and the gate closed, and to carry what she knew about the private Freddie the real one, the one behind the performance with the same care and the same discretion she had always brought to it. The days and weeks immediately following Freddie Mercury's death on the 24th of November, 1991, were, for Mary Austin, the beginning of a responsibility that would define the next 30 years of her life. She was 39 years old. She had known Freddie for 21 years. She moved into Garden Lodge, or rather, she remained in it, since she had been closely present there during his final period, and she began the process of inhabiting the role he had assigned to her. The world outside the walls was in an extraordinary state of grief and attention. The press, the fans, the music industry, the wider public who had loved Freddie Mercury, and who now needed to process the loss of him. Mary Austin participated in none of it. She did not give interviews. She did not appear at public events. She did not make statements. The gate at Garden Lodge remained closed to everyone who was not a member of Freddie's close circle, and the close circle, understanding what had been asked and what was owed, respected the closure. The decision Mary Austin made about how to inhabit Garden Lodge was not the decision that most people in her position would have made, and its implications have been more radical than they might initially appear. She chose not to preserve the house as a museum of Freddie Mercury's celebrity, not to maintain it as it was on the day he died, not to open it to fans or to film crews or to the documentary makers who have, across the decades, produced dozens of accounts of Freddie's life that would have benefited enormously from access to its interior. She chose instead to live there as a home to raise her children there, to continue the ordinary domestic life of a private person in a private house, while maintaining the specific quality of protection that Freddie had asked for. This meant that the house continued to contain Freddie's presence in the particular and irreducible way that a lived-in space contains the presence of the people who have been most fully themselves within it, without that presence being curated or staged or managed for anyone else's benefit. The question of what has been kept inside Garden Lodge, what specific objects, rooms, or arrangements have been maintained in forms that relate directly to Freddie Mercury's occupancy, is one that Mary Austin has never answered in full and will, in all likelihood, never answer fully. What is known from peripheral accounts and from the fragments of Mary's own rare statements is that certain things have been preserved. The piano, Freddie's piano, is there. Objects from his collection. Elements of the interior that reflect his taste and his specific aesthetic. What is not known, and what constitutes the most genuinely private aspect of what Mary Austin has been protecting, is whether there are spaces within the house that have been maintained more completely, rooms that have not been altered, or areas that carry the specific quality of his presence more directly than the rest. The fan mythology around Garden Lodge includes the idea of rooms that have not been entered. Mary Austin has never confirmed or denied this. The silence is itself a form of the protection. Mary Austin has given very few interviews across the 30 years since Freddie's death, and the ones she has given have been characterized by a degree of care and control that is itself a form of communication. She does not talk about the inside of Garden Lodge. She does not describe her daily life within its walls. She does not discuss the specifics of what Freddie asked her to do or what she has done in response. The silence is not hostile. Her manner in the interviews she has given is warm and composed, and clearly the manner of someone who is at peace with the choices she has made. It is simply the silence of someone who understands that the information she holds is not hers to share, and who has organized her relationship with the public world around that understanding with the same completeness and the same consistency that has characterized everything else about the way she has honored what she was asked to do. In 2013, Mary Austin gave an interview to the Daily Mail, one of the very few substantive interviews she has given since Freddie's death. What she said in that interview was not revelatory in the conventional sense. She did not describe the interior of Garden Lodge in detail. She did not provide information about the specifics of Freddie's final months that had not been documented elsewhere. What she did was speak, with evident care and evident feeling, about the quality of her relationship with Freddie and about the nature of what she understood herself to be doing in the years since his death. She described him as the great love of her life. She described the responsibility of inhabiting Garden Lodge as something she takes seriously in the specific way that people take seriously the things they have been directly asked to do by someone they loved. And she described, without quite naming it, the specific quality of the protection, the way in which the privacy of the private world is not a burden, but a form of the relationship itself, continued beyond death into the ordinary life of a woman in a house in Kensington. Among the most significant decisions Mary Austin has made in her 30 years as the keeper of Garden Lodge is the decision about what has been done with Freddie Mercury's ashes. Freddie was cremated. His ashes were given to Mary. She has never disclosed where they are. In 20 years of documentaries, biographies, fan investigations, and journalistic inquiry, the location of Freddie Mercury's ashes has never been definitively established. Mary Austin knows. She has said in the fragment of a statement she has made on the subject that she promised Freddie she would never tell. This is in many ways the most complete expression of the protection she has been providing for 30 years. The most private possible thing, the physical remains of a person kept in a location known only to the person entrusted with them, in fulfillment of a direct request made by the person whose remains they are. It is a form of loyalty so complete that it has no parallel in the public record of any other major celebrity death of the 20th century. Brian May and Roger Taylor have both spoken about Mary Austin across the decades with a consistent warmth and a consistent respect that goes beyond the social courtesy of former colleagues. They have described her as someone who understood Freddie in a way that was specific and irreplaceable, and whose decisions about Garden Lodge and about the protection of his private world have been entirely in keeping with what they understand Freddie to have wanted. Neither of them has pressured Mary Austin for access. Neither has publicly questioned her decisions about what to share and what to keep. They have, in the interviews they have given, consistently deferred to her authority over the private world of Garden Lodge in a way that suggests they understand that authority to be legitimate not as a legal matter, though the will gives her that authority too, but as a moral one. The person Freddie trusted most with his privacy is the person who has maintained it most completely. That is the whole of it. The 2018 Bohemian Rhapsody film depicted Mary Austin as a central character in Freddie Mercury's story, as the person who knew him longest and who understood him most completely. The film's depiction of their relationship was generally considered to be one of its most emotionally accurate elements, the aspect of Freddie's life that the writers and director had managed to convey with something approaching the real texture of what it had.